Good morning and welcome to everybody. My name is Nayaswamis, Hriman and Padma, and we are blessed to be here today. I was born and raised in Monterey, not too far away from here, so I know what drought is and lack of rain. Going to Seattle, first year we were there, first summer was 1994, and they had what they called a drought. And I was a scoffer, I can assure you. They had no idea what a drought was, but so insulted were they for the fact that it didn't rain to water their lawns that they just let the lawns die and figured, no, I'm going to put out the effort. And of course, where I came from, we put a typical person, and in those days anyway, put a lot of effort into keeping their lawns green and so forth. So times have changed and things have switched. Where we live in Northwest, it's about 10 months of the year is mostly cloud covered. But we have these engineers at Boeing that remind us that at 30,000 feet, the sun is always shining. And we were a little disappointed to come down a few days to go find it raining here, not because we dislike rain, of course, but because we always fear that if it rains, they're going to blame us for bringing it. But that too has finally changed, and I'm happy to applaud you for your drought being over and the rivers running full and high.
And look, we have sun.
One time Swamiji was in Seattle, and he was giving a talk, and he mentions in passing sunshine. Then he stopped and he said, "Sunshine, look it up in the dictionary." So is that what that is? Yes, the sun shines at 30,000 feet, and that's really our subject today, isn't it? The divine presence. There's a charming, if improbable, story that makes the rounds from time to time about a rabbi and a priest, and no, they didn't walk into a bar. It was a little village in Eastern Europe, I think, and there was a monastery at one end of the little village and a synagogue at the other end of the village. And as has happened in our lifetime and so on, the monastery was populated merely and only by 3 old guys. And they weren't getting any young men coming, and they were beginning to worry about this. And so as things happen in life, the abbot of the other 2 happened to be on good terms with the rabbi at the other end of town, and for whom they had mutual respect. And the 3 brothers, they were really puzzled. How were we going to attract younger men to lead the life of renunciation and devotion with us? What's going to happen to our little order? And so one of the monks said to the abbot, "Well, why don't you go talk to your friend the rabbi?" Why would I talk to a rabbi? But anyway, they were friends, so he thought that nobody else had a better idea. So he made an appointment and went to have tea with the rabbi at the other end of town. And they chatted about, things that people like that do and comparing notes. And then finally, towards the end of their tea and time together, the abbot said to the rabbi, "We've been a little puzzled because no one is coming to join our order, no one younger, and we're getting kind of old, and what are we going to do?" And the rabbi said, I don't know. And then so they got up and they were shaking hands, and then the rabbi said something quite unusual. It didn't make any sense, any logic, but he said, maybe one of the 3 of you is the Messiah. And the abbot said, it doesn't fit my theology exactly. But, okay, so, well, thank you. And so he walked through town and went back to the monastery. And the other 2 brothers said eagerly, "Well, what did the rabbi have any ideas?" And he said, "Well, he said something kind of crazy. He said he thought maybe one of us is the Messiah." And the boys said, "Well, okay." So after that, day after day, they began thinking and meditating on this. Well, what if one of us is the Messiah? Well, it couldn't be me. I'm kind of a schmuck. And so, well, maybe it's, Brother Joseph over here, or maybe it's the abbot. And so they all started kind of thinking about that, and they began thinking about the good qualities of one another. And by, their relationship changed. And they began to see the light and the potential, the Christ, if you will, in one another. And then one day, a knock came to the door, and a young man came and said, I would like to be a novice. I would like to learn your way of life and be like one of you. And then week after week, another one came, and soon the monastery was filled once again. Imagine our lives, how transformed they would be. You know, it's hard for us to think of ourselves as divine beings. You look in the mirror and, you know, oh my God, and so on. But it's easier really to think of other people, not so much as fully formed like a Christ or something, but to sort of distill their good qualities, to ponder and appreciate their good qualities. You know, when we think of the divine light, it says in the earlier readings, the last few weeks, it said, the light shineth in the darkness, but the darkness comprehended it not. And that's a puzzling statement. We all know what good and evil is, but clearly this is not about good and evil. This is something where the light coexists in the darkness without transforming the darkness, and yet they coexist. It's one of the greatest and deepest mysteries of the Avatara, of the divine creation. You know, the Avatar is not just a person. The entire creation is the Avatara. Spirit has made manifest, hidden through the illusion of good and evil, of duality. But that divine presence is there at all times. We need only have eyes to see, as Jesus said repeatedly. And so this, you know, Ananda talks about meditation, and I love this phrase. It's in the book Awaken to Superconsciousness. He says, meditation is upward relaxation into superconsciousness. Upward relaxation into superconsciousness. It's like we're miners. You know, Padma and I watched that movie about that famous collapsing mine in Peru, was it? And they were there for a long time, and they were finally released. They all came out alive. But it's like we're miners, and we're down deep in the mine, and we're trying to make a shaft to get out. But there's all this clutter, all this junk, because it's collapsed in upon us. And so when we can lift our energy into the light, then a whole new world happens. You know, in 9/11, after 9/11, Swamiji, as given who he was, no surprise that people were asking, well, what do we do? And people say, well, I'm going to pray for those terrorists and so forth. Swamiji said, well, why don't you pray for the victims? I'm not sure the terrorists are all that open to the light. And then other, what I call bleeding heart liberals, pardon me, you're all here with me, because I'm that too, of course. But you know, in our ignorance, we imagine we can transform the darkness. Well, why don't we go over there and talk to those bad people and we'll just, you know, we're good people and just reason with them. Swamiji said, that's not going to work. Because there's only one way to receive the light, and that's consciously. I've met a lot of wonderful people in my life, virtuous people, good people, but the road to hell, as they say, is paved with good intentions. Stoicism from ancient times is the premier, it's sort of a little bit like Zen, it's the premier chop wood, carry water. I don't know nothing, you know, I'm just going to be good, and that's wonderful. I know virtuous people who are way above in terms of conduct, some of my devotee friends who could use some work. But there's a difference. The devotees, as flawed as each and every one of us are, have consciously opened to the grace, the divine grace of the light. You know, virtue gives you good karma, but you go to heaven, astral world for a while, have a nice rest, and eventually you get the good karma, a bank account, this success and all that, but eventually it's taken away. You know, in this world, take pride, you know, I'm proud because I'm successful, I have money in the bank, or I'm attractive or beautiful, famous, all that kind of junk. But, the world is self-regulating because there's always somebody going to tear you down. Imagine if we had a president who was an egotist. I mean, just imagine. The world is his guru. And the world's going to tear that down because that's what the world does. If nothing else, a person's going to die and lose their bank account. You can't take it with you, you see. So in this world of duality, it's self-correcting. But think of the Adam and Eve story. In the paradise of divine bliss, consciousness, in the naked form in which they were happy. It's only when they ate the apple of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which, quite apart from other aspects of the interpretation of the story, the knowledge of good and evil is the dual eyes of distinction, my separateness. I like you, I don't like you, it goes on. It can never end. We try to make the world a better place, no doubt, but it's just going to go on. The drama of this life, Master said, has for its lesson the fact that it's only a drama. Do the best we can, absolutely, because it's because of us. But the transformation into true happiness comes to the degree that we transcend those distinctions. And to give one another, judge not, lest ye be judged. Yogananda said, even here in our ashram, even here among our devotees, we have human cobras. Because negativity, good and evil, exists in all of us. And until we achieve the transcendent state bit by bit and finally permanently, the potential for judgment, negativity, exists in all of us. So he said, even here, he said, there are these people. And when I, teach our students and new disciples in Seattle, I warn each one of them. I said, yes, we're good people. Okay, we do the best we can. But even here, there are people who nobody else will listen to anymore because they express negativity too often. And when they'll come up to the newest people and say, oh, how are you, and so on and forth. And then you listen quietly, and, oh, so-and-so is wonderful. But, it's always the but that brings out that negativity. We have an issue as human beings. We think that a true friend is somebody we can let our hair down and gossip. That's our definition of friendship all too often. How many conversations talk about God? How many conversations, express appreciation for this person and that person? You see, this infection that we have, all of us, this is why we need one another to lift ourselves, our conversation, our perception, because, none of us are perfect. And so it is in the whole history of spirituality that until you achieve that state of enlightenment, you can fall. Human behavior is never predictable until we achieve that. That should make us not judgmental, but compassionate. If we are sincerely trying, let's help one another in that. Because the light that the darkness can't comprehend, it's always there, but we have to consciously reach up for it. In that process, we're going to stumble, and so are others. And so to give one another, to see in one, to make the effort to come together, yes, in meditation, in places like this, and in services like this, absolutely. Because here we can transform our tendency to perhaps gossip or criticize and so forth, to be lazy and, to get ourselves to come on Sunday. Yes, that's valuable, but we also need to do things together, serve together, and to help one another. If someone's having a down day or they're going down that road towards critique or gossip or something like that, which is so, ingrained in most people, especially when you go out at the water cooler at the job site or something like that, or with your family, family trees all have fruits and nuts, right? And we have to accept our family, our given family. Yogananda would often say, but we can choose our friends. And when we choose those people of high-mindedness, struggling as each and every one of us do, but honoring in each and every one of us that effort to do that, then like those 3 monks, we will awaken someday with the Messiah. And we will become that, Tattvamasi. We are that. And this is the great teaching of all spiritual teachers, of all faith traditions. It's the hypnosis that we're not that is our greatest illusion. And on this path, Jesus, never forget that Jesus Christ was crucified for making this statement. In our age of a somewhat greater awakening, we can now talk this way and not be crucified. Well, there's some folks out there who would not want to hear us say this, let's face it. But by and large, in this, when I think of Adam and Eve and in their innocence not seeing each other as man and woman, isn't that the issue in front of us on this planet today? Transgender, gender distinctions, racial distinctions, religious distinctions, cultural distinctions. That little drama, that little allegory of Adam and Eve is playing itself out in our nation, on our planet. It's the, will I choose to see the soul? Will I choose to see goodness? Will I choose to see myself and other people, even in their shortcomings? Or will I condemn and judge them for those same shortcomings? Worse yet, for the most superficial shortcomings of the color of one's skin, etc. This is a living battle going on in our planet today. And the path of self-realization, the Vedantic affirmation that there is only one reality, God alone, is the transmission of the new dispensation that will save us from ourselves and is born of the inner stillness that meditation offers to everyone to guide us on our unique path. So let us affirm and honor the soul, the divinity, which is ourselves and each and every one of us.
If you're anything like me, every once in a while people will send you little things with humor in them, on the emails and stuff. And there was one not long ago about the peacemaking meeting that had been scheduled was canceled due to conflict. But I don't know about you, politics aside, I was deeply moved and inspired to see the positive effects of globalization yesterday with millions of men, women, and children around the world standing up together for all of these things that Hriman was just talking about, for dignity and for justice and for acceptance and tolerance of one another. It was deeply moving. Thank you, Master, I say. But on the topic today of energy, the topic is the infinite Christ, but the affirmation was on energy, and I felt inspired to sort of tune into that a little bit. There was the time when Yogananda's disciple, Bernard, had been asked to do a very difficult task, and he just wasn't doing it. And finally, Yogananda spoke to him about it, and Bernard said, "But Master, you can do it because you're a master." And Yogananda said, "What do you think made me a master? Doing it." That's exactly what it takes. We have to put out the energy. When Hriman and I were first married, we worked full time, we were meditating, we were serving. It was every moment was taken. That's the kind of age of Dwapara that we live in. And then I got pregnant and we had our first child. And talk about living 24/7. I learned very quickly. I was quite naive about it when I first got into it, but I had little babies, and so 4 or 5 times a night I was nursing. And you know, they say that the Russian form of torture is to never let you fall into deep sleep. And so you walk around in a daze for a couple of years, you know. It's pretty intense, and everything else on top of it, and trying to keep a sadhana and a family and so on. And I thought I couldn't possibly do one more thing. And then I had another one 20 months later, and I discovered, yes, I can do one more thing. You just, you know, we don't think that we can. We limit. You know, this is our form, this is our personality, this is me. We are spirit. We think we have a limited amount of things that we can achieve and energy that we can put out. But it's just an illusion. And it's an illusion that, well, we live come out of a material age, and we're still, you know, pretty much dealing with material consciousness all around us. It's like a miasma, you know. We just sort of become duped by those thoughts, and we take on certain attitudes with those thoughts. I was born in a Dutch family in a small Dutch colony in South America. And I lived there, grew up there until I was 10 years old, and then we immigrated. And in that tropical country, Suriname, you know, we had 5 servants. Life was good. And then we came to America and discovered, you know, we had to put out energy. And we had no servants. And I had to learn how to, you know, do everything. And my chore, like, typically, one of many chores was doing the dishes. And I remember my parents would come in and sort of check my work, you know, my dishes, and there was always something I wasn't doing right and not clean enough, you know, yada yada, this didn't get wiped down. And my attitude was, well, if you don't like it, do it yourself. To my parents, but that's just an excuse for laziness. You know, we have to put out that energy and lift it, and it's there for the taking. When Swami Kriyananda asked Hriman and I to move from Ananda village to Seattle to be the spiritual directors there, it was a 24/7 job. This was 23 years ago. And you're just busy around the clock. There's so much to do when you're... Ananda is not just a church, it's a way of life. So there's all these, community and different aspects of the work that we're doing. And it's very, very busy to help, serve all of those people. And on top of that, he asked me to take with me, I used to manage the publishing department at Ananda Village, Crystal Clarity. And he asked me to keep doing the foreign rights aspect that I'd been doing as part of that while I was in Seattle. Well, that was a big job too, It was dear to my heart, but there was no time for it. So somewhere between 10 and midnight, I was doing that, which was getting our 150 books of Swamiji's into different languages around the world. And we managed to get them into, we're in 37 languages right now. Over 600, 700 contracts. So it's a lot of negotiating and contracts and work and things to follow up on. And I did that on top of being the co-colony leader there with Hriman. So one time I was we had gone to Ananda, Assisi, to visit Kriyananda, who was there at the time. And we were in the car with him going down to Rome. And I just sort of half teasingly, half seriously, said something about these 2 jobs he threw onto my shoulders. And he just turned around really calmly and said, "If you didn't have that work, you would die." And I knew what he meant. We need to be challenged and challenged to the very edge of our seeming abilities so that we can find that edge and reach for God to do it with us. If it's easy, an easy life is not a victorious life spiritually, because we have to transcend ego. And the only way to transcend ego is to stand up to ego and to challenge ego and to break through and then be able to see and experience our limited, our limitless, infinite reality in God. And we have to viscerally experience that in order to transcend. And ego transcendence is at the heart of the spiritual life. It's essential for us to do. Another time when I was managing the publishing, I never was a big reader, and the publishing world was nothing I ever tuned into. I had to learn it all from scratch, but I didn't have that love of reading even that, some people do, a lot of my friends do. And certainly I was never a writer. And at one point, there was some back cover copy that needed to be written for one of the books, which he would usually write, or we would ask a couple of the good writers in the community to sort of pitch in and help with that. And that day, I came to him with that issue, and he said, "Well, why don't you write it?" And I said, "I can't write." He said, "Don't ever say that. You can do anything you put your mind to." And that was so important to hear. And I found since then, because I used to think the same thing about public speaking and teaching and all of that, I found that once you do put your mind to it, you realize, I can't do it, but God can do it. And I can draw on that energy and bring it into that activity, and it's infinite. Yogananda said a little pinch of our finger can light the city of Chicago for a week. We just are using a hair's breadth of our potential of energy. The reading this morning said faith and energy go hand in hand. And faith can move mountains. Literally move mountains. We've all seen and heard about miracles. And the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. And so I was watching a movie the other day that some of you have seen about Padre Pio. It's one of my favorite movies, and every few years I like to look at it again, because he was a really inspired stigmatist saint in Italy that many of you, I'm sure, know about. And at this part of the movie, it was at the end of World War II, towards the end of World War II, and he felt inwardly guided to build a hospital, a big hospital, in order, as he said, to care for the invalids and wounded from the war. And so he was talking to a friend about it, and he said, he showed on that, it was out in the countryside where his monastery was, in the middle of nowhere. He said, that's right there on that hill, that's where the hospital's going to go, huge hospital. And she said, well, how can that be? I mean, where are we going to get the money? And I loved his answer. He said, Divine Mother, he called her the Holy Mother, can open the hearts of people. Surely she'll find a way to open their pockets. I thought that was perfect. You know, he was undaunted, and it was built within a couple of years. We can, yes, we can do it. It's there at our fingertips. Yogananda, when he was younger and he had the long hair when he came to this country as a young man, he would go streaking across the stage and he'd say, "How feels everybody?
Awake and ready!
How is everybody?"
Awake and ready!
And then he'd talk. It was like, wake up, raise your energy, lift your energy in order to hear this message. He said, and then stay awake. Like my son, when he was a teenager, and the alarm would go off, and then I'd put the alarm across the room, and it would go for 45 minutes. Just, I'd get him out of bed to go to high school, and, I'd come back in, and he's back down on the bed. I mean, that's literally us, guys. That's how we live, awake and ready. So Swami Kriyananda was inspired, wasn't he? He starts our Sunday services with that every single week. So we can be open and hear for those who have ears to hear, and put out the energy and act on it. Bless you.